What was there anything you wanted to talk about first?
Oh no. What is this conspiracy, Starfish? Welcome to our podcast, Real Talk. We're your hosts, Mary Contrarian Starfish. On this podcast, we will explore stories about conspiracies, misinformation, lies and deceit in politics, and how it ruins people's lives. Please subscribe and listen to wherever you get your podcasts, and we look forward to having you with us.
Hello, hello. So today's story, it is a story about a guy. You probably heard it in the news. This guy is driving home. He's like a repairman, right? He's just
Okay.
driving home, and he all of a sudden gets bumped in the back of the car, like crashed into, and like what the hell, pulls over.
Right.
And when he pulls over, the guy behind him is not, or the person is not getting out. So he's like, oh no, gets out to see if the guy's okay, goes over to him, and the guy pulls a gun on him and
Oh,
says,
shit.
yeah, he says, I don't know exactly what he says, but it's something along the lines of, get on the ground. So at some point he gets the guy with the gun. He gets some friends to help him out, like calls them and they come help him. They take this guy's truck, so he has one of those big white box trucks, right? They
Sure.
search the truck and then take it, and they're looking for ballots. They're looking he is
For
convinced.
ballots?
So we're talking about election ballots.
Okay.
The guy who pulled the gun, so he calls the police and says, "Hey, I have this guy here. We caught him." So the police show up. They're like, "What are you doing?" And apparently he thought this guy was involved in some big, he calls it, he's like a mastermind of voter fraud. And he,
So what kind of repairman was this guy?
like an AC repairman,
Oh
right?
my god.
Yeah, saying like what kind. I mean, it's not to say AC repairman, because like it's really just like the white truck and like the going from place to place.
Well, he's a repairman, so I mean, I go from place to place. Yeah.
So the police are like, okay, so you believe this guy has ballots in his car. I don't really know what led him to think that yet. We're still like learning about information about this case, but so the police go and check out the truck. They're like, all right, fine. We're going to open up the truck. We're going to check this out. There's nothing in there, they said, except for parts that you would expect for an AC repairman, right?
Okay.
Parts.
Yeah.
Then they said, where'd you get this? He's like, well, I've been surveilling this guy for 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And he,
So he's like watching him fix the refrigerators and stuff. Like,
yeah, he's been following him from his house. I know, he knew where he lived, and he had been following him. So the cop said, all right, take me where you've been sitting. I want to know, where'd you go by his house? And so he took him there. The cop asked the guy, actually, I'm not sure if the cop was a man or woman, but anyway, asked the guy who got the gun held on him, okay, can I check your house? I mean, this guy's been sitting here watching you. He sees a shed. He sees it was like a mobile home. He was in a trailer park. Can I
right.
check? Let me just check your house too. We checked the car. There's nothing there. I just want this guy to know there's nothing going on. And of course, the guy who just had a gun pulled on him is nice enough to let them search his trailer, his home.
Wow.
He has a wife and children there.
Oh my god.
Lets them search the shed. Nothing there. Nothing there. So now this poor guy, of course, the guy who pulled him over, he was just charged with aggravated assault with a
Oh
deadly
yeah.
weapon.
Yeah.
Right. It's a felony. And because this is in Texas. And that's like
Oh, that's my favorite place. Yeah.
20 years you can get for that. He was an ex-cop too.
Was this in Dallas or where was it at?
Houston.
Oh, okay. That's even okay, great.
Yeah, I've
So
been down to Houston. I mean, the cops were kind of like, "Okay, I don't know about this. This is, where are you getting this information?" And they
Right.
they said that he had called. So the guy who called, his name is Mark. He used to be a cop, and he was actually forced out of his I think he was a captain or a sheriff or something, and he was forced out of his position because he ruined some big sting operation they were doing on, like, drag cars or something at Kmart. I don't know. Um,
I love you know what? We should at least do, like, once a month, like, Texas stories. I would love to.
I know.
Either that or Florida, like, Texas or Florida. I want those stories.
Oh, yeah, they're so much fun. They're so much fun. This guy just has this idea that, he's a cop still in his mind, and so he's a private detective. So the interesting part is this guy was hired by somebody, the cop. He was an ex-cop. He's hired by somebody to do this. He was hired, paid $250,000 for this.
So this is the guy that, like, pulled this poor little repairman out of his truck,
Right,
and he
right.
was paid $250,000?
Yes, he was paid in 3 payments. The first one was like, 10 grand something, and then it was like another $25,000.
And, well, who was he paid by?
Yes, this is the fun part.
Oh,
So
good,
then,
okay.
the day after this happens, all of a sudden he gets paid 200 and like $15,000 in his account. And the cops, this is all in the affidavit. The cops figure this out. They're like, "What is going on? Where are you getting this, information basically?" And he said, "I work for a company called the Liberty Center for God and Guns," or something like that.
The Liberty Center for God's
Yeah, it's the Liberty Center for God and Country. Okay, okay,
I
I
like
think
that
that's
one better. God and God.
right. I always think if they're saying, like God, guns, and God and Guns, right?
Okay.
So it's and it looks, if you go to the website,
Sure.
it's just, it looks like something anybody could have slapped together. And then I went to the Facebook page too. There's not very many posts.
Sure.
All of the posts are really things you would kind of expect, but the first posts were in September, and, the creation of the page looks like it was in September of this year, and then that guy was paid very shortly after. And so then you look at the creators of the page, and they're not shy about who they are. It's a lawyer and a doctor. These guys
Oh
are
my god. So, what kind of lawyer and what kind of doctor does it say?
I looked it up, and the lawyer seems to kinda do all kinds of things. He seems a little bit like he just seems to kinda get involved in a lot of random cases. The one in particular, well, I think this is the most interesting one, and the doctor, he's just a medical doctor. I don't know exactly, I don't even know if he's in practice still, but between the 2 of them, they have filed several lawsuits in Texas to, basically stop things from going through, like, equal rights. They feel
Wow.
like, but
Why?
the most interesting one was recently they tried to stop all of the mail-in ballots from being, counted, which is how they took that case up to the Supreme Court.
So, are these, like, white supremacist people or what?
I mean, they're white. It's hard to say. They just seem like they are, people who want a much more traditional, they're very religious, a much more traditional family oriented,
Ugh,
kind of originalist, if you will, where men are men, women are women, m- you know, and rich people are rich, and it is the way it was, is what they want. Less of a
god,
uh,
don't
society for the people, but more of a society for them. So,
uh,
yeah, very fascinating that it really leads all the way up to these guys.
okay. And so they hired this idiot for $250,000 to go find someone who was committing a quote unquote voter fraud?
Right, and
Okay.
I think the most troubling thing about this is, all the details about it are really fascinating, but the most troubling thing is this poor guy. His name is David Lopez. He is just a guy, just a guy with kids, and he had the wrong looking truck and the wrong job. And suddenly he's targeted for looking, seeming, appearing. I have no idea where this ex-cop got his information. Maybe he just started following him. I mean, the people who paid him don't endorse this. They're like, yeah, we don't do this. I mean, we are investigating possible fraud, and we have them. They had a bunch of people working for him, like 20 people, and they said they come and bring their information and they discuss it, and but they didn't endorse it. But this guy and his wife, I mean, they're scared now. And this impacts real people. Like, this isn't
So,
some.
well, you mean the repairman's scared?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
He was pulled over, held at gunpoint. The guy had him on the ground, had his knee on his back.
Wow.
I know, and it scared the crap out of him. And he was kinda teary-eyed when he was talking about it, and he's like, "If that guy can go to jail, he needs to go to jail.
That's
Was in the
crazy.
wrong place, the wrong time." And that's what's really troublesome to me is it's one thing to I believe in these conspiracies, hoaxes, whatever plots, if you want to call them, even some of these scams. But how do they impact real people? This is real fucking people we're
Oh,
talking about.
yeah. Yep.
It can destroy your life in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like this these kinds of stories, if we understand these people and what they went through and how this hurt them personally just because somebody randomly targeted them, then maybe it will help us, because I feel like we're very, very separated right now. Not just because of COVID, not because of any of that, but he lives in Texas, he lives in another state. Wherever you live, you don't know him, you don't know his family, and you don't know his life, and you don't know how this has impacted him. And when you don't know the people and you don't know what you're saying and what you're doing and how it's going to hurt them, it's a little easier to believe in this.
Totally. So, I mean, so did the cop guy that did all this crap, did he end up going to jail? Like, is he in jail now?
He has been charged. He was arrested and charged just a few days ago. So he
Okay.
is sitting in the county jail waiting. I don't know why they waited so long. The district attorney waited like 2 months now. It happened in October.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the lawyer, who of course is the one who paid him, he's not saying he's his lawyer, but they held like a little press conference saying, "Look, everything we did was great. It was fine. This is what," but the the lawyer said he didn't know why the DA waited so long to arrest him. And I mean, it's Houston and it was Texas and it was a pretty charged, still is a little bit, time. And so I think maybe she was just waiting, but I don't know. You never know all the details behind it because it's not in the official court documents and stuff. You only have what they put in the documents. So there's an affidavit from um, the police who did all the researching, the investigating that day. And then there's some interviews from the guys who were involved, the 2 men. And then, of course, the lawyers who paid him. So 4 men total we're talking about here.
Wow.
Yeah. And, again, you just really don't know what was his motivation, what made him think that. And that's a lot of what everybody's focusing on, but I think it's pretty clear that they just hear these things, they become scared, they see what they wanna see.
Right. What's scary about it though is like this guy was an ex-cop.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you wonder. It's like, what else did this bastard do when he was an actual cop? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super surprising to me because that's the funny story about the Kmart thing. He's an interesting character. He went to court to say, "Hey, I felt like I was wrongfully suspended for this thing." You have no idea what's happened to me, how I was betrayed by my coworkers in my department. They destroyed me financially.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and this was back in 2004.
So
So,
this is the cop you're talking about now,
yeah,
right?
this is the cop,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't know that much about the guy who had this happen to him, but the guy who was the cop, I mean, he had a very public event happen to him back in 2004, so it's all in the news.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, because he's a police officer, so, um,
Interesting.
yeah. The DA said his alleged investigation was backwards from the start, first alleging a crime that had occurred and then trying to prove that it happened. But this is the funniest part. This is actually kind of funny. So, he thought that the guy who was, David, the one that was the repairman, he thought he had like 750,000 fraudulent ballots, first of all, which is so many. But he thought too that the guy was having all of because he's Latino,
Right.
and the ex-cop thought that David was having all the children in the mobile homes and children in the area sign the ballots because those names don't come up in databases.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And that's how he was able to perpetuate this fraud is that he could I don't know. I mean, the details of it are so hard to figure out.
Wow.
Why would, he obviously has some inside knowledge of elections being part of a government. I don't know. It's not like everybody works for the government knows the whole process, but he's probably been in on meetings or discussions or something. He was like a captain or sheriff, I think, right? So
Oh my god.
having that knowledge really makes his, understanding of it kind of like, okay, I can see how you might realize that they wouldn't be in the database, but that he had 750,000 ballots that kids were signing. Oh my goodness. It's just um
Wow.
I feel so bad for the guy. I saw him cry and it really kind of hit me a little bit like can you
The
imagine? Can
the
you imagine?
repairman, yeah, yeah, like being accused of something crazy like that.
Right. Can you imagine having somebody know where you live? You could be followed
Yeah,
right now. That they think you're transporting things. They think, and we're lucky that nothing happened to him. That he didn't get shot. You know.
right. Oh, yeah. It'd be a completely different story, but still,
Right.
like, way to
Right.
go after the Orkin man.
Ah, right.
Like,
Oh my goodness. I
the
know.
Orkin man, he's filling the votes, he's getting all the kids in the trailer park to sign it all.
I mean,
That's just insane.
ugh, the conspiracies themselves are always so funny. Um, There's such a leap, the
Oh,
leap
yeah.
from you see a car and you see it going to these multiple places, then you see it coming from a mobile home, and then you see all the children and your brain just makes that connection. Oh, I get it. He's having the children sign it. It's just like, where? Why? How?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. Um, Using Hispanic children to sign ballots, he said. So
Oh my god. That is so terrible.
I'm really fascinated to follow the story a little bit and
Oh,
to
yeah.
see how he gets, sentenced and everything. And
Well, and they should go after the lawyer and the doctor too, like, what a bunch of freaks.
yeah, great question. So I'm going to play a clip here. It is of Mark Aguirre's lawyer explaining his perspective of what the events that occurred that night. And then also it is from the lawyer Jared Woodfill, who it represents the doctor, and they kind of co-own this Liberty Center.
Well, I believe it's a political prosecution, Jessica.
Attorney Terry Yates defending his client tonight.
He was working and investigating voter fraud. There was an accident. They were surveilling a vehicle. There was an accident, and then a member of the car got out and rushed toward him, and that's where the confrontation took place. It's very different than what you're citing in that affidavit.
Aguirre, who was indefinitely suspended after a botched raid outside a Westside Kmart in 2002, told police he was working for the Liberty Center. The DA's office says he got paid $266,000. Dr. Stephen Hotze, GOP power broker, is the president. Jared Woodfill is his attorney and confirms they employed Aguirre and about 20 other private investigators.
Does the Liberty Center endorse that?
No, well, of course not. And I would be shocked that if that's what happened. His company definitely worked for the organization. With respect to what happened regarding the incident in question, not very familiar with the details of that yet, but we will be looking into it.
Aguirre's bond was set at $30,000. Houston police say they have body cam video of him holding the victim down.
So you see there, Jared Woodfill said, basically, we're not really liable. We don't really know that we don't endorse any of that. He said in another article, he's not sure if Aguirre was working on the investigation at the time of the assault. But of course, again, reiterated that they don't approve of such tactics. He said, we would never endorse that, saying go pull someone over, pull a gun to their head and make them open up their truck. He said he would be surprised if the allegations were true, because that seems kind of out of character for any of the people that would be working under the Liberty Center. So I think it's going to be difficult to pin it on this lawyer and doctor.
Right.
Like I said, they came out immediately. They had a press conference. They had like a 10-minute at least presser where they talked about how they were in the right.
Oh my
They're
God.
very public figures in Texas. And I think
Gross.
this is what bothers me, is that all of this is totally legal. Why is this? I mean, I have to be honest. If I felt like there was some fraud being perpetuated that the government was ignoring, I would want every single person fighting for it possible. So I can't imagine a lot of people getting really mad at the people who hired the investigators, because I keep kind of thinking that too. Like, why don't you start going to the police with this stuff? If the courts aren't going to listen because of the way it was presented, then go to the cops. If you saw a fraud, feel free to go to the police, right?
Right.
But the concerning part for me is that the cop, yes, that he was a former cop, and that he behaved in this way. So it makes you wonder, I don't know, just that thinking that they have. What is that thinking that makes them believe this beyond? It's almost like the same thinking. You have to suspend reality for a minute when you're believing in these things. We were talking about Scientology last time. How do they believe in that? We talked about scams. How do our brains let us do this? This
Right.
stuff is obviously false, but it's so easy to say that when you're not in it.
That's true. Like on the outside, it's like, well, what a bunch of idiots. But yeah, like when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, he has just been hearing over and over and over again that there was a fraud. There's a lot of people who've been saying it. The president is saying it. And a lot of these congressmen, these Republican congressmen, said that, we believe him, the president. So then that has totally legitimized it in a lot of people's minds, that it is a problem that needs to be figured out and dealt with. And that it makes, I almost didn't want to talk about the conspiracy itself, because it's, again, giving it air. The conspiracy is so fascinating, but these are like real people we're talking about here that they're hurting. And like, that is the most important part to me. Their
Right.
stories and how their lives. Like, I just think about all of these poll workers that they've accused, these, hundreds of affidavits or whatever.
Yeah, like
I'm
total
like,
innocent.
who are these people, and how it really harkens back to like Alex Jones and the whole Sandy Hook thing, and how he was just so convinced that that did not happen, that so many people started going out and perpetuating, doing these crimes in the name of it, and he had to go to court because of it, and then he had to apologize to the parents, and their stories are very fascinating. It's the same sort of deal here. This guy is now fearful of people now know his name. The police were cool and they actually wrote his initials.
Right.
But he went on the news himself. He decided to go on the news himself, but I think if it were me, I would not. I'd be like, "Nope, I don't want anybody knowing where I live. These people will come to my house and they
Oh yeah.
will."
I mean, you're right. I mean, that sucks. There's so many victims of these things for like tons of stuff. I mean, even think about like Epstein's victims.
Mhm.
You know, like can you imagine that? Like you've been totally like assaulted by this damn creeper billionaire
Oh, yeah.
who has like tons of money and lawyers, and like they totally invalidate everything that you went through.
Yeah, they kept that Epstein thing. We should talk about that sometime too.
Yeah,
It is extremely interesting. So, these I'm really interested in the stories of the people. I'm interested in how this impacts people for real because the
yeah.
conspiracies themselves can take just such a lot like a life of their own.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that could happen to like any one of us. Like all of a sudden you could just find yourself in the middle of some conspiracy that you had nothing to do with. And then you have like all these hate people all over your social media and coming to your house and doing God knows what. You know, it's like what are you supposed to do? It's like you have to leave your job, everything. Like I'm sure there's a ton of stories out there about that.
Indeed, there are a lot of stories out there like that, and I am so looking forward to digging into all of them with you guys. Thank you for being with us here today. That is it. See you next time.
Thanks everyone for listening to Real Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. We look forward to having you on our next one.